Okay, this is a creative question type thing. So choose a fiction book and a non-fiction book, mix them together, and describe the results.
Oh, geez.
Play with it.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
I'll just mix the last fiction book that I read with the last nonfiction book I read. Instead of trying to instead of cultivating a connection, I'm gonna just like mix two and see what happens.
Sure.
So the last fiction book I read was called Opioid Indiana.
Okay.
And it's about like a high school teenager. He's coming of age in Indiana, which is like a small Midwestern state in the United States. And it's about like the opioid crisis there, like the addiction to opioids.
Yeah.
And the narrator is like just this hilarious guy who has like so many horrendous things happening to him in his like life, but somehow you're like laughing the whole way through because the narrator's so funny and like ridiculous. And so that's the fiction book I'm choosing. And then the nonfiction, I read this book. I've been working on writing summaries about nonfiction books for like my company's app. And the last one I did was called Leading from the Middle. And it's about being a manager who's in the middle between like your employees, your boss, and your peers, and like how challenging that is to just have like information and feelings and interactions and conflicts on all these different levels every day. And also how it's like a really big opportunity though to learn and like collect data, like you're in a unique position. And that book like talked a lot about how middle managers actually, like the psychological toll on them is bigger than almost any other level in companies. And I thought, I was like, I found that really interesting. So, but anyways, now to connect the two. So Opioid Indiana was a fairly short book. Like I want to say like 200 pages. So I think if we intersected them, we'd have to create like an epic novel, like maybe 500 pages. And it's the narrator's entire life. So the book ends with the narrator basically becoming addicted to opioids as it is now. And so I think the second half of this book would have to be the narrator as a middle manager at a big American corporation addicted to opioids, but like, and barely hanging on to his job. And like, yeah, so that's my answer.
Yeah, I was thinking of something along the lines of like somebody seeking opioids just to relieve the pain of middle management.
Yeah, or here we go. He's a middle manager at a big pharmaceutical company.
Right.
That's responsible for the opioid crisis and addicted to opioids.
Right. I would read that book. What is a very helpful critique that you received?
I think the best critique I ever got was in my creative writing like program. And I wrote this short story and I workshopped it, and people had like a lot of different critiques of it. And then 2 months later, I rewrote it and workshopped it again. And my professor was like, I'm going to be honest, I feel like you lost like the magic that was in this story in the first draft. Like it's gone. And I think it's because you tried to take everyone's critiques too seriously. And sometimes when someone critiques a specific part of your story, instead of adjusting to match their critique, you should do the opposite. And so if they're like, I don't like this for this reason, like triple or quadruple down on your intention with that scene. So like, and then they'll see like maybe the problem is that they don't see it the way you're seeing it. And what you need to do is make it more extreme and like lean into that quirk or like that thing that that's rubbing people the wrong way, to show that like and then they might actually come around to it when you like make it more extreme. And so to slow my answer down, it's like when like, or make it more concise, when someone critiques you, sometimes the best response is to do the thing that they're critiquing more extremely.
That is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Can you give me the specific, thing in question in your novel that he suggested you double down on it?
Yeah, it was like there was this one scene, and there was like the scene was this whale washing up in a lagoon. And people were like critiquing the believability of it. Like they were like, this wouldn't happen, or there's like not enough here for this to be a story, or like they're like the meaning behind this is unclear, kind of thing. And I think the first time I rewrote it, I tried to be like really clear about why the whale was there and like the science behind like how a whale could wash up in a lagoon. That was like because they critiqued the believability. And so my answer was to like think about all the details and try to make it as believable as possible. But I lost this sort of like magical feeling of what it would be like to wake up and go for a walk in a lagoon and suddenly see this giant whale like blocking the path because the tide receded and the whale, and so the answer was to like make it like almost crazier and more like lean into like the description more than the details of the like how it's possible.
Wow. So you ended up doing that. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were both kind of like content with the final product?
Well, I was content. I don't know, because it was my last submission to that workshop. So then like I edited it out of my class, but
I am in awe. Wow, this is amazing. I love it. Love it. Maybe after that I'll just go and kind of like, because I'm very intrigued about the idea of extremes, and I think extremes always not all, I don't like the word always, a lot of the time they point towards talent. So I don't like when people try to water down extremes. I think extremes are good and they should kind of like be used instead of like toned down. So anyways, we're getting into talent now, but cool, very cool. Okay, let's move to the next one. So what are some words you love and words that you hate?
I think I really hate the word it, like IT, and the word thing, because I write them all the time and they just get in the way. They're not descriptive. They're like kind of they're a classic way to dodge thinking clearly, like how we talked about clarity earlier. And so I think I hate those words like as a writer, because I know that they're traps. And when I see them, it means I'm going to have some work to do to figure out how to say something more clear and more meaningful.
And words you love?
I love like words for emotions. So I think like I don't know, have you seen any of those like dictionaries of emotion words where they get into like how different languages have words for emotions that other languages don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I
That I
recently saw,
get really into that because I think it's just fascinating how we kind of like build our emotions
right,
societally, and
right.
how some of them even change over time. Like what were some of those examples? There's like words in English that have like a positive opposite, but in time they lost the positive opposite. So like maybe if I pull up a word thing, I'll think of one. Uh I can't remember the exact example, but I'm thinking of like a word like detestable. And I don't think this is actually true, but like if it had an English opposite that was like testable,
Right,
and that was like a positive thing that like people, it meant like people felt uh like they could like approach you, like if you were like approachable, and you know the opposite of
right,
detestable. And there's words like that where there's an opposite, but it see like society just stopped using it, and so
right,
it like
right.
stopped existing. And I don't know, I find that really fascinating because all of a sudden you're like seeing language as connected to like emotional experiences.
Right,
and
right.
and like why did that word drop away from away from our language? Like why did
Yeah.
this positive emotion word drop away? And like what would the world be like if we still used it?